May 11th, 2022 edition of the Urban League's Jobs Network Digital Career Success Series, brought to you by the National Urban League. I'm your host, Kenneth L. Johnson, president of the Harlem, New York-based diversity recruitment firm East Coast Executives. If this is your first time joining us, welcome. The Digital Career Success Series, DCSS, is a professional development series that helps members of our Urban League Young Professional chapters and other diverse job seekers develop new skill sets that will enhance their careers through digital platforms such as webinars, Facebook Live, and Instagram Live. The goal is to provide an opportunity for professional development right from one's computer. Today's DCSS, Time to Redefine Professional, is sponsored by our good friends at LinkedIn and features a dynamic team from LinkedIn. Today we have Andrew McCaskill, career expert and communications executive, Minjae Orms, Vice President of Global Brand, Consumer Marketing and Marketing Research, and Jacqueline Jones, Head of Strategic Partnerships and Diversity, Inclusion, and Belonging. It's going to be a great one today. I'll start this out by letting them introduce themselves. You know what? Let's start it out real quick. Jacqueline, I'm going to bring you, I'm sorry, Minjae, I'm going to bring you onto the stage.
Hello, Kenneth, and hi, everyone. Great to see you. Thank you so much for having us today. You see the fancy bio that someone has written about me, but really what you should know about me today is that I am a born Korean, but raised Canadian, and then in the last 20 years or so have lived in America, so a bit of a mixed heritage and history. And today I work at LinkedIn, as Kenneth mentioned, and I'm about 8 months into my new job, having been colleagues with Drew and Jacqueline. So I will send it back to you, Kenneth.
Thank you for joining us today, and congratulations on the new job. We're really excited to see the work that you'll be doing there in LinkedIn. All right. Next up on the platform, Drew McCaskill. Drew, should I go Drew or Andrew? What's it going to be today?
Definitely go Drew. Usually only my mom and my accountant call me Andrew. So I'm Drew McCaskill. I'm super excited to be in having this conversation today. Working with to get a chance to talk to two of my favorite people at LinkedIn, Jackie and Minjae, and you as well, Ken. And so I sit in the communications and marketing function at LinkedIn. And I am a career expert, so I do a lot of our external engagement around helping people use the platform more strategically, and I'm excited to be here.
We are excited to have you, and look forward to you sharing sharing through your lens with our audience. We have a great audience, Drew. I'd like everybody to start checking in and let us know where you're from. Let us know, share your LinkedIn profiles, whatever it is that you need to do to make it a very interactive session. Next up, Jacqueline Jones. Jacqueline, how are you?
I'm doing really great. I'm so looking forward to this session. I love working with the National Urban League. Been doing work with the Urban League for, oh gosh, almost 4 or 5 years now. Been at LinkedIn for 6 years, and I had strategic partnerships for our diversity, inclusion, belonging group here at LinkedIn.
We are excited to have you as well, and we just appreciate all the work that you do and always keeping the National Urban League close and coming out to support us. So thank you so very much for that. All right, look, this is going to be an amazing session today, and I want to start it out. So once again, what is the Great Reshuffle? Professionalism is now being refined and owning your professional brand. I'm going to step aside and leave this conversation to the LinkedIn team, and then I'll come back to you when we start Q&As. Thank you very much. Please leave your questions in the Q&A field, and we will have a designated Q&A time to get back to you at the end of the session. Thank you so very much, and enjoy.
Yes, hi everybody. I personally am so excited for this conversation. Dory, if you could drop the link to the video in the chat, and we may circle back to it afterwards. But essentially, the video really looks at how this world of work is changing. Before the pandemic, something like 1 in 67 jobs were remote. Now it's 1 in 6. There's just basically the contract between companies and workers have changed. Everyone's experienced this. I personally, as a woman of color, have been very excited about intimidated sometimes, but, with chaos, there's opportunity. And I've chosen to lean into the opportunity part of this whole situation that we're in, because I find that there's just so much more flexibility around work, hybrid environments, virtual environments, but also employers seem to be more open to entrepreneurship. We find that bubbling up. A second point, what makes me excited too, is around, I find everyone leaning more into authenticity. And that's what, this whole thing around redefining professionalism. What does it look like to bring your whole self to work? And that's something that I'm incorporating now in my own career, which I'm super excited about. And then lastly, in addition to the flexibility, just new choices in technology, new choices in learning, really make it an environment where you feel you really can grow and redefine what it means to be a professional. So super excited to speak with Minji and Drew about this, two people which I think embody authenticity and pushing the envelope in terms of what's possible. So invite the audience to come along on this ride, just diving into these questions. So Minji, I'll start with you. What are people saying about, the trends and the emerging views around professionalism? What inspired you to create this theme?
Yeah, absolutely. So as I mentioned, I'm about 8 months into this job. And so I was part of this whole great reshuffle that we hinted at, right? Which is re-examining what are my priorities? How does work sit in my life? And ultimately, like, how do I want to spend my time driving impact? Mm-hmm. And one of the reasons I said yes to this job at LinkedIn was seeing, as a member of the community before I became an employee, the kinds of conversations, tone, the topics, and the voice really shifting, even in the feed that I was seeing, in the kinds of things that people were willing to think out loud, say out loud, share with each other, not just the accomplishments, but the struggles too, and what they've learned from it. And that really inspired me personally. And so saying yes to this job was, can I actually be a part of an organization where literally our product is meant to serve people in such a way to help them get the best of themselves and achieve more from their professional environments? And can we also, with integrity, practice that as a team together in how we treat each other, how we should perhaps lead our organization, but also by doing so, inspire more leaders out there, other brands, other companies to do the same, and really paying attention to what people are sharing, telling us, and so forth. So I came into the job with all of that and kind of going through that experience personally. And so sitting inside, and I mean, trust me, in my first 90 days, there was no plan to suddenly go and like create a new spot or anything like that. I was still learning my way around and seeing what's what. But again, the intensity with which people were sharing and telling us what is going on with their lives and themselves, really, redefining like work and their relationship with work, was just so palpable that we, as a company and a product that is then again wanting to be helpful to people, like it felt like a moment where we needed to reestablish our relevance, acknowledge the fact that we see you, our members, we see you, people out there, what you are dealing with, and we acknowledge this, and therefore we can help you. So that it had a lot of some of the personal experiences, a lot of what we as a team observed on what's going on in the conversations and what people are sharing on LinkedIn, and simply mirroring it back. So really, it's what people were showing us and telling us that became the work, rather than us, I would say, inventing a creative that didn't exist out there.
I love this. So it's like you created from deep listening on the platform, what people were saying, what was emerging. So actually, this seems to me a campaign or an idea that's created from the people, really, on LinkedIn.
Yes.
Totally.
Totally.
Yeah, I love this. I love this. And yeah, and that's why when we saw it, that's why it resonated so deeply, because it was really, it's showing all facets of life now and how the work and life, your schedules have emerged and essentially your lifestyles. So this is fantastic. So Drew, as you're thinking about this and you're seeing this and you monitor trends and do fabulous research around what's happening around Black professionals on LinkedIn, how do you see this affecting, or what are the implications for Black professionals?
Oh, wow. There's so many implications for Black professionals, right? I mean, you gave the stat earlier that before the pandemic, 1 in 67 jobs was remote, and now it's 1 in 6. And so think about that in terms of about 60% of Black professionals live in the South, right? And so with remote work being this huge open aperture now that was not there before, I can live in Jacksonville, Florida, or Baton Rouge, Louisiana, or Atlanta, Georgia, and have a big tech job, right? I don't have to go to the Valley to get that job because of remote work. I can have a job in media and not move to Manhattan, right? And so if you think about what remote work then does in terms of opening up more access to opportunity, that's just one piece of the pie, right? What we, I'm a Sunday school boy, so in my mind, I think about the workforce, like all the tables in the temple have been flipped, right? In terms of how we are all thinking about work. And I think that that's true in particular for people of color and African Americans, because I think that this moment where we are seeing, unemployment rates dropping for African Americans is at one of the lowest rates that we've seen in a long time. But I think that that's also indicative of the fact that we are having the opportunity to have much more agency and much more control over our careers and how we think about work. This whole great resignation and great reshuffle, the way we call it at LinkedIn, I think that people are rethinking and reimagining why they're working, how they want to work, where they want to work. But we're going to see, I think, I look at consumer trends as a canary in the coal mine to workforce and employee trends, right? And so my generation, much like my parents' generation, we made our purchase decisions based on value. How much bang for the buck can I get for that $139? Can I get 56 ounces of ketchup as opposed to 48, right? And so so much of that part of my career and career thinking was based on how much am I going to get paid? Let me do the math right now and divided by 2 times 12. That's what my check is going to be, right? Whereas younger consumers, I think, are Gen Z folks and millennials who are largely people of color, right? Are making so much more of their purchase decisions and their employment decisions based on values. That's a very different perspective than almost all of us have really thought about in corporate America and in just as leaders inside of companies. So I think we're going to see much more of companies being more intentional and active about how do we talk about our values so that people understand who they are and that we look more like a great place to come work. People are going to have to be much more intentional about equity and inclusion, not just how they talk about it, but equity and inclusion in action, right? Younger Black folks are not going to come into corporations or into jobs or into teams where they have to be the Rosa Parks and Martin Luther King of corporate America or the workforce. They're just not going to do those same things anymore that my generation was more than willing to do just to be invited into the space. And so I think that changes the game, right? We are in a very employee-driven market right now. And I think that is a great opportunity, particularly for people of color, to make the decision, how do I want to work? Where do I want to work? In what way? I think we're going to see a lot more people, particularly Black folks, saying, hey, I know that we're supposed to be back in the office by January 1st, 2023. I don't know about that. I don't know if that works for me anymore. I don't want to come back 5 days a week. In fact, I'm not going to come back 5 days a week. And this is what I'm willing to do as it relates to that. Or I'm going to be intentional about going out and finding a space where I don't have to do that because I can go to LinkedIn and I know for a fact, because Minjay, Drew, and Jackie just told me that every 10 seconds, somebody gets a job on LinkedIn. Every 10 seconds. So I've got options, right? I think that's a very different marketplace than we've seen previously.
Yeah. So I hear in companies have to work. Oh, Minjay, go ahead. Minjay, please.
Oh, sorry. I apologize. I was just going to add to what Drew said, which is something we're seeing in the product side too. So when you think about LinkedIn, and the way that I got on LinkedIn too, is it's kind of like your online resume, right? Like when you go to your profile and you go look for me, Minjay Orams, and then it's like the things that I have done or the places that I've worked at and what have I done in the past. What's happening on LinkedIn right now in the community is what's on top of mind right now, the present, in terms of, yes, there's a profile that reflects some part of me and who I am, but a lot more people are utilizing it to then post things and share things and engage with other people's posts in a way that shows more of themselves. And what Drew just articulated as the values part of like who we are and our value system, our belief system. And so what people are telling us, because we're doing a lot of research right now to then better understand, how do we also need to evolve the product to help meet people's needs? And one, people are telling us the profile is very useful, but I'm also using the feed, the posting and the engagement that I'm doing to show something of myself so that I can screen companies and people out. And I think this is a really powerful statement and a moment that Drew articulated of like the powers on the employee side, like powers to people. Like it's people who are articulating like, I am who I am, here's what I want. And if your values as a company or people don't match up to mine, then it's a way for me to pre-screen you. Whereas I think before, especially again, Drew, for probably you and me, like we grew up thinking we have to hide some of these things. We have to like show up this way to fit in. And like, we check the boxes of other people's criteria. And therefore, and I see some of the questions coming up here too, people are therefore asking companies to do the same. Like if you have a page as a company on LinkedIn, what are you standing up for? What do you believe in? And what are your values? And how do you treat your employees? People want to know that more and more and more. And above and beyond, obviously, with the compensation, but the values pieces in the company's part is becoming really, really highly relevant and important for people as well.
Yeah.
I love this. I mean, you all have hit on so many different points. I mean, companies have to show up differently. Employees have more agency. Drew, Black, employees, Black professionals have more agency. What I hear coming out and both of you say, I mean, there's just so many gems here. That's why I was so excited to talk to you both, is your authenticity is your power, right? I'm hearing there's a call for authenticity, right? On both the company side, but on the individual side. And where I want to go with this conversation is steer us more to the individuals. Like, how do you show up authentically? Like, what are some of your personal takes on that, not only in your work, but also on LinkedIn? And getting lots of shout outs on the chat, keep these comments coming, they're great. So you're clearly hitting a nerve here. Anybody wants to start off around authenticity in terms of personally your own take on it and how best to show up on LinkedIn and in your personal lives?
I mean, so I'm going to say something that's sacrilegious in D&I circles, right?
I'm not surprised, Drew.
And so let me say this. I don't believe in bringing your whole self to work, right? Like LinkedIn doesn't need 3 a.m. in Ibiza Drew or bottomless mimosa Drew at the office every day, but it does need me being authentic, right? And there's a difference between your whole self and your authenticity. And I think that is that telling people who are other to just bring your whole self to work does not serve us well, right? And so when I think about authenticity, I think about what is the best of what my experience and my culture and the life that I live. What can I do to bring that to this experience at work so that the work is better and so that the work is more creative and more innovative, right? And so I wasted so much of the beginning of my career trying to look and sound and be like everybody else, right? Like I work in PR for much of my career, and it is very very white and very women focused and very sort of coastal leaning. And I'm a big Black guy with a Mississippi accent, right? And so there was no amount of like J. Crew sweaters that I could wear that was going to make me like all of my coworkers. Assimilation is exhausting, and it leaves no time for like creativity and innovation. And so I think that one, when you are authentic, right, but you also understand how to read the room and read the culture of the space where you're in, I think that that's an amazing creative balance, right? And I think that that's where I say that be authentic on LinkedIn, but also be really, really mindful and intentional about the fact that it is a professional network still, right? And so you probably don't want to have a beach selfie as your profile picture unless you're a surf instructor, right? And so I think that there's a balance between authenticity. When I talk about authenticity, I'm talking about bringing culture and experience, right? All of those things to not hide who you are when you come into those spaces. And I think that is going to be, if you cannot bring the fullness of that authentic perspective and POV, point of view, into that space doesn't deserve your goodness, right? And there's so many opportunities, because I think that our differences are really our superpowers, because it gives us the opportunity to say, I know that I'm uniquely skilled at these things, or these other things come really, really easily to me. But I also couple that with the fact that my lived experience is different from the person sitting next to me. And that's a good thing, right? That's how problems get solved, right? That's how, if you are a person who is different from the other people in the room next to you, you're committing professional malpractice by not sharing your authentic perspective, right? Because oftentimes we are the canary in the coal mines that that keep our companies and our teams from making egregious mistakes as it relates to culture. Almost every company, no matter what the product is that they're selling, they are trying to decode culture. They're trying to better understand culture as it shifts rapidly. And a lot of what is making culture shift are things like sheer population growth, right? Population segmentation. 92% of the population growth that has happened in this country in the last 15 years has come from communities of color. African Americans, Hispanic Americans, Asian Americans, right? And so I don't care if you're working on a political campaign, or if you are selling a widget or a car or professional services, your consumer of today is a very multicultural consumer, and your approach has to be inclusive. You don't get to that with homogenous teams.
I love this. So I'm hearing a lot of opportunity in what you're saying, from being authentic and bringing your whole self to work. Well, maybe not your whole self, as you said, you use your judgment. Mainly around bringing your secret sauce, making that more the professional side of that. But you want to, because the population shifts have happened, because our authenticity is what basically our jobs need and want to create more value. I'm just hearing a whole new world opening up, for people of color around bringing their whole culture and expression into the environment. So that's exciting. I mean, we're getting a lot of questions and comments in the chat, which I appreciate. Some call outs around Patrice, Tyra, around really agreeing what we're saying. So I think people are feeling it, and we're confirming a lot of what is coming up. And Minjay, I want to bring it back to something that you hinted on earlier around authenticity. And though it comes out on LinkedIn, it's actually in a richer, larger sense of you actually coming into your being and incorporating more of your culture. Like any lessons or best practices from you as far as authenticity and bringing that to work and incorporating that in what you're doing?
Well, like most of us, I'm a work in progress. So I can tell you, I guess, what I have learned so far and where I am today. For me, some of the shared experiences and feelings of a lot of what Drew spoke to comes from being an immigrant. So I was born and raised in Korea. I moved to Canada when I was 13, didn't speak English, didn't know the culture, didn't know the social norms, didn't know how to dress. And so I think about that time in my life as a real moment of like kind of for survival. I had to disappear into the background and just really observe and mimic like what other people were saying, doing, dressing like, and what activities do you like, what bands do you listen to. And it was a real longing for connection because I didn't speak the English and people didn't understand there's a person in here who just didn't know how to like connect with them in the way that they understood me. Trying to use like verbal things like math and music to show them like, I do get you, like I am a person in here. And that continued throughout my college, where it was just really about I gotta learn the ways of being in this place to survive. So I think there was a part of me that was lost to fit in. And then I think as I really only starting in my 30s, I then had similar experiences at work where not because of my language or culture, but in my style and approach of working was very different from, I think, what kind of my bosses or that environment expected me to be. And so I was told that I wasn't going to make it there. And there was, right, like a different sense of belonging that was broken. And long story short, I was fortunate enough to have had the support of people in my life, like, friends and people who know me like as a person, as well as a coach, and just kind of like working through the difference between what are like skill sets that I can and should work on no matter where I go. And it'll be a gift for me in terms of my ability to read the room, know the audience, and be able to tell my story. But what's a feedback in here that is a perception problem that I shouldn't take to heart and break me. And working through that took time and energy, but I'm glad that I came out of that experience almost like shedding the doubt around me. And since then, I feel like in the most recent 10 years of my professional life, I now know the people around me that I can rely on, who I am meant to be as a person at home as well as at work. And so my courage to be authentic comes from my community. And I think that community for me also exists on LinkedIn, like both people that I know personally, as well as folks that I only know by like internet friends. But that's kind of for me, the version of authentic that comes through in terms of like who I am as a person, that I can say the things that I need to. And the only other thing I would add to this conversation about this topic is, as a leader of a business and an organization and an industry, I think I try to intentionally, to Drew's point, like show the authentic self in service of making more people feel comfortable. There's more room. So to the degree that creates that inclusivity and the environment, both at the team level, the culture, and on LinkedIn, if that helps other people or someone else connect on a shared experience, moment, that that's for me, I feel like is a reason to keep doing that, in addition to obviously then like being showing up with integrity, like as a person myself and for those around me.
Oh, that's amazing. So you pull a lot of strength and not validation, but I would say collaboration with your community in order to pull out your authenticity, which is brilliant, right? Because as you know, as community members within the National Urban League, you know, there's a strong chapter affiliation all across the country. There are natural communities there, so you can reaffirm yourself professionally, both online and offline, in terms of who you want yourself to be. That's what I'm hearing, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
This is brilliant. This is brilliant.
And like, you know, to my earlier comment about the work in progress, there's still a lot of unlearning I'm doing of the behavior that I adopted to fit in. But again, I feel really fortunate that at this juncture in my life and career that I feel like I don't have to fit in to belong somewhere. And I hope that everyone has the choice to be able to do that.
Okay, that was so powerful what you just said. Right. First of all, I want to acknowledge you for your your humility as far as being a continuous learner. Like we all, you know, coming into this age, I say, of authenticity and new world of work, being willing to unlearn what we've learned in order to like reinforce who we are is so powerful. So thank you for saying that. That's awesome. Drew, I see you nodding a lot there in agreement, you know, sort of
yeah,
like,
I mean, I'm nodding in like loving Minjae's POV, her perspective. And I also think kind of double clicking on that is the authenticity. I feel like that I sort of have a responsibility to show up authentically now because I have the privilege of visibility inside of my organization. Like once you start to grow your career and you get some modicum of air quotes success, right? Is that I think so many of us have been taught in our careers, in our professional lives, that your success is sort of equal to your ability to emulate whiteness, right? Because so much of what we see as success at work, if you look at some people's websites, the only leaders you see are white leaders, right? And so there's this almost mindset that, okay, if I can just emulate whiteness enough, maybe I can slide in under the radar, right? And I think it is such a head trick for so many people, professionals of color, because you think, oh, well, I've got to, again, it goes back to that assimilation thing. And so for me showing up as me, who I am authentically, I am, unapologetically Black, unapologetically gay, like I'm a technophile, I'm a hip hop head, I'm a sneaker head, like all those things. I probably wear way too much jewelry for a professional at work, right? Like those are all of those things that make me authentically me, right? But I have a responsibility to not hide that piece of me because I think it is the antithesis of the image of white professionalism that I've been indoctrinated with, right? And that's one of the reasons why I love Welcome Professional, the campaign that Minjae gave us and gifted us at LinkedIn, was that we saw all of these professionals with their natural hair or with their tattoos or with a little bit of extra makeup, right? Like how these professionals showed up every day was beautiful to me, right? Because I don't want to pretend like we don't live in a world where you can still be discriminated at work for how you wear your hair. Your natural hair, the way that it comes out of your head, you can be discriminated against at work for that, right? The House passed the Crown Act, right? So that women of color and people of color could not be discriminated at work for wearing their natural hair, but there were still 189 congressional leaders who voted not to pass that law.
I know.
Right? And so we still live in a society that has not perfected this yet. And so it's beautiful to me that so much of culture shift comes from companies and marketing, right? And that's a huge power that we have in the world.
And responsibility, right?
And a responsibility that we have in the world. And where we're at LinkedIn, we can do it with authenticity, with agency at scale. And we have authority to do that in a way that lots of other places don't. And the fact that we're using that authority and that authenticity and that scale to have that conversation at a higher level feels right to me. Right? And it feels like this is a great place to be. This isn't a commercial for LinkedIn, but what I'll say is that, excuse me, one of the reasons why I wanted to work here is because I believe that all African Americans should have an active LinkedIn profile. They should be finding their friends and their colleagues and their fraternity brothers and sisters and their former co-workers or members of their church on the platform, because it is too powerful of a platform for us to self-select out of. We should get on and we should engage and we should have those conversations and make those connections, largely because the tool works. It just works extremely well.
Yeah.
We make up 14% of the US population, but 28% of active conversations on Twitter. And what I always say, the reason why I came here is because I imagine a world where we over-index on a platform that was created to create economic opportunity, right? And that's what LinkedIn does. For me, it's a no-brainer, but I also want to make sure, and Minjay and I have this conversation all the time, is that, our open for business sign is on, but we're doing so many things now that our welcome mat is out.
Oh my gosh, I love all of this. I love all of this. I think we're going to move to Q&A in a few minutes. I see a lot of people wanted to jump in with questions. Before we break for Q&A, so everyone get your questions ready, and also the ones that are in there we'll get to. What are some tips that you have, personal favorites on showing up authentically on LinkedIn, or what are some of the favorites you've seen? I mean, I personally have seen people now sharing about their daughters' rehearsals at Carnegie Hall and struggles they've had within their jobs, and just people relating to it. And what I'm also learning is that the more people show up like that, is the more personable they become. And it really benefits their careers because people start to see both sides, the human behind the role, right? And the motivation behind why you do what you do, right? But what is your go-to, like what's your personal favorites in terms of, before we wrap it up for Q&A, of how you show up on LinkedIn, or any examples of what you've seen best in class?
Oh, there's like no singular example. Just one. Okay. Okay, I'm gonna find her profile and drop in here, and I hope Bree doesn't mind that I'm sharing her profile with everybody here. She's gonna be like, why are all these people looking at my? So I'm in marketing, as I shared. I thought about maybe going into HR at some point. Maybe that'll happen again down the road, because I really do care about people at work. But just to say that, just from like my day-to-day work and function perspective, there's kind of like not as much overlap between like why I should have more friends in HR versus marketing. But I gotta tell you, like, some of the folks who work in recruiting and hiring and like HR professions on LinkedIn are like so funny and amazing and real. And so like I have genuinely seen my own feed change based on like who I follow, like whose conversations. So this lady, Bree, who is a recruiter at, here, I'm putting in the chat, Bree's profile.
Get lots of connections today.
Yes. Bree is an executive recruiter at Capital One. And I just noticed one day the kinds of things that she likes and encourages people, like people who maybe got rejected from jobs, connecting them to somebody else, like what she was doing was just making my whole experience of LinkedIn really positive and hopeful and future forward. So I started following her, and then through her, I met like so many other people in this profession who are kind of doing the same thing. They're kind of these like, I don't know what to call them. Are they angels? Are they fairies? Are they guardians? Like just like holding us all together in these moments as people are thinking through what's next for them and go out of their way to just help people and support them. Now, what it does for Bree and folks who are doing this on their side, right, is the three things that we showed you earlier on the slide, which is their personal brand. Like me as somebody who doesn't know them, now suddenly I feel like I know them as someone who is helpful, who is out there like championing for people, making connections. And so I've actually had coffee, virtual coffee with Bree, just to be like, I need to know this person because like she just like brings so much joy and like connection. Yes. So that's the example that comes to mind. So I guess go follow Bree.
This is so awesome. Oh my goodness, this is so great. What you just gave the example is finding your flock on LinkedIn. Like that's available to people to create their flock and to create their support circle that you articulated before. And also you reached out to this person, Bree, and started virtual coffee. And that's the way you use LinkedIn to form those connections, that community. So that's brilliant. That's brilliant. How about you, Drew? Like, what's your favorite? Like one that, not just one, not your favorite, just one. You don't have favorites.
Well, I would say that my sort of favorite thing, I guess, about LinkedIn is I like the fact that, to Minjay's point, that I know about what I'm supposed to get and what I'm going to get when I come to LinkedIn. I know that it's going to be about things that are work related or about getting business done, right? And the community of people who are doing business, the business of me and my own personal, professional, or financial goals, et cetera. I just love the fact that you can find your own pockets of community. You don't have to just come to LinkedIn to look for a job. There's a lot of things that you can look for and find on LinkedIn. I mean, if you have a side job, right? Like you can have, a profile that talks specifically about, hey, I'm a freelance writer, and in addition to these things, here's what that profile looks like in addition to my LinkedIn job profile. But I think that LinkedIn gives you an opportunity to really tell your professional story in a way that allows people to get to know what you want them to know about you as a professional without you having to do a million meetings, right? There's all these, it's your story is there for people to discover or for you to lead people to. And I think that that's the important thing for me about, you talk about personal brand. And I kind of think of like, the way I use LinkedIn is highly curated, right? Like I'm very intentional about what I share. I do so authentically, but I'm also doing so intentionally, right? Like I think that my professional brand or my personal brand is really about my superpower. What's that thing that I know that I do better than anybody else, right? What is that? How do I define my professional sort of superpower? I know for me, I'm a storyteller. I told you I'm a church boy. Isaiah 61, Spirit of the Sovereign Lord is upon me. I've been anointed to tell good news and set captives free, right? Like I know I'm a storyteller, but your superpower in action, where have I done it? Like, how do I use my superpower? Where have I used my superpower? How do I like to use my superpower? And then finally, to what end? What are like the outcomes of this superpower at work? What are the ways that I'm making an impact and changing spaces? That for me, like if you have a real idea of like, how you want to share. And there are going to be some days where I'm going to share on my LinkedIn's, like, the other day, like one of my former mentees called me a PROG. And I posted, because it was a work thing, right? I was like, yo, one of my former mentees who's got a great job now, he didn't need any mentorship from me. Now we're just peers and friends, called me a PROG. It would have been great. It felt great, but it felt a little weird. It hit differently because it was like 2 days after my 45th birthday, right? And I shared that. That was just an authentically Drew moment, right? In terms of like, yo, like OG hits different after 45, right? And so, but nobody's going to give me a job based on me saying that I struggled with being called a PROG on LinkedIn that day. But every one of my PR colleagues, people I hadn't talked to in forever, people who are also in that over 40 category, were hitting me up talking about it. So it's community, right? Your flock, right? And so I say, that's the thing that I love about LinkedIn, is that there's a group of people that sort of get where you are at a space that so many of us don't come from families where our families get where we are at work, right? Neither of my siblings have the same kind of job that I have. Neither of my parents had the same sort of kind of job that I have. And you can kind of find people who see you and kind of get where you are in your work life.
I love that.
Who are also people who have a similar experience. And there are very few other places where you can get that in a really curated and safe place.
Oh my goodness, I love that. So like the opportunity is like, you get people who get you, you travel with those people, you travel with them on LinkedIn. Y'all, that went by really quickly, by the way. I can't believe we went through 45 minutes. We're on to the Q&A. I hope y'all got some really great tips, and we see Kenneth back there. We have a lot of questions. We're going to try to get through some of them. I'm going to let you kick that off, Kenneth.
No problem. Listen, that was amazing. People came here for the Digital Career Success Series. You dropped into a LinkedIn masterclass. Thank you so very much. I thought the three of you were all amazing. We're going to jump into this Q&A, but please keep in mind, everyone that's on the feed, stay with us through the duration of the Digital Career Success Series, because we will be giving away 4 LinkedIn profile preview and reviews. So with that being said, stick around and you will be contacted after the Digital Career Success Series if you are the individual selected. All right, let's jump into the Q&A. I'm gonna start here. And anyone can jump in and answer this question on the LinkedIn team. Is being authentic enough without validation?
Ooh, that's a book. That's a great question.
It's a really good question.
I'll say that I became much more brave and bold after I had some success under my belt, right? But I think that that's also my generation, right? Like a good friend of mine asked me one day, I was getting ready to go on a job interview, and she was like, "Are you going to shave your beard?" And I was like, "No." And then she said, "Are you going to wear a tie?" I said, "No, not going to wear a tie, not going to shave my beard." And she was like, "Would you have 10 years ago?" I was like, "Absolutely." Because 10 years ago, I didn't have my current resume, right? And so I think that there's a little bit of conviction that you get from having some validation and having some success, or having, some damn good work under your belt. But I don't think that you have to wait until somebody else tells you a superstar to show up as who you authentically are. I don't. I think that I made the mistake of waiting too long. But I do think that there's something to be said for your work preceding you.
Yeah, I want to jump in here. I think you can't wait. I don't think you can wait. I mean, it's almost like there's a certain point of your career where you just determine that, reminds me what Andrew said before, is that without expressing who you are authentically as professional malpractice. And I think the discussion that we had before around authenticity and gifts like that's who you were meant to be. And this is what companies are valuing now, you showing up that you only have, there's only one fingerprint. You have this unique fingerprint in the world, like treasure that, right? You're supposed to fulfill a vision, a mission. That's it.
You know what, let's stay there. So what are some ways to vet for companies' values? You know, many present great things on their website, but how can we determine if they put them into action?
I think actually Erica, one of the participants, answered this very well in the question too. But I mean, interviews are right. Like, let's face it, it's a very time box moment. If you get an opportunity to experience their culture and how much they're willing to show it. So I usually try to ask them about like, hey, I see that, one, to show that I've done the homework. Like, I noticed that your company values are like X, Y, and Z, and start it that way. But then I ask them for specific examples of like, what's an example of a policy or program that you feel like exemplifies this specific value that you say you care about as a company, and how does that live out for your employees, and see how they answer the question. And I think it'll be revealing for you in two ways. One is there will be things said in information that will better inform you about, oh, they actually live through their values in XYZ ways, and there's more to it than the words that are on their website. But then if you actually don't get the substance in how they answer the question, that tells you actually something about whether or not they're actually living with their values.
Yeah. I think that you have to really interview companies and folks just as rigorously as they interview you. I think that you've got to do the old way of doing research of just like Googling their last 2 press releases. That's not how you research a company anymore. I think the way you research a company now is you go on LinkedIn and you look at, find people who actually work there, who look like you or have a similar experience. There may be, or people who used to work there, and ask them. You got to ask people questions like, how was the culture when you were there? Did you feel like you could succeed? Some of those questions are things that you should be thinking about. The wondering, and looking to see. I often say that that if the senior most person of color at an organization is the D&I person, that company probably has a D&I problem, right? So I think that you've got to look at the cues and the things like that, like how do they show up in the world? At the highest levels, like when you're really, really far in your career, or looking at super senior roles and things like that, I would say even look at how they spend their money, right? Are they spending money in the communities where they make money? Are they, if you look across, like if you are a person of color, can you get that product in your neighborhood, right? And if you can't, why is that, right? Does the advertising look like you? Does it reflect you? Is that going to be what you're going to experience when you get inside the organization? All of those things are really good cues, but you just got to do, I think the way that we do research and need to do research is different from our non-Hispanic white counterparts.
Excellent. I want to take this opportunity, and Dory, I'm not sure if you're ready right now, but I'd like to go back to the video. I think we have it queued up with the sound. I think it's a great way to kind of wrap a bow around this conversation as well. So Dory, if you can go back to the video, that would be amazing.
Let's talk about what is professional today. We can flip the script by getting
professional does not have shape, does not have limits. I've been a janitor, I've been a designer, I've been an executive.
Creating my own seat at the table was doing things different than how it's ever been done before.
It's just like an ebb and a flow. Dad life, work life.
It's all life. There's work and there's what works for you.
Professional is you, professional is us.
It's ours to define.
Really love that video. I think you guys represented that extremely well today. Listen, I would love to continue this conversation on and go through a few more of these questions, but we're kind of at the back end of this. So I definitely would like to take this opportunity to thank the team at LinkedIn for joining us today. Simply amazing. Also, I know you guys are wondering how you can stay connected to some of the work they're doing. Please feel free to connect with the team at LinkedIn by visiting their professional profiles on these feeds. Dory, if we could show the slide with the actual contact information, that would be amazing. Yes, so you can find them all on LinkedIn. You can find Andrew McCaskill on LinkedIn. Of course, you can find Jacqueline and Menjay there as well. Amazing, amazing discussion today. I'd like to thank you all on behalf of the National Urban League Digital Career Success Series team, Wanda Jackson, Dory Brown. Thank you all for joining us today. Again, we're going to do this again next week. So please, please take an opportunity to join us next week for managing mental health. But before we end, team from LinkedIn, Drew, any last closing words, sir?
Don't just have a LinkedIn profile. Actually come on and engage.
Menjay.
Gosh, how do I follow that? Come and join us, because you are the people who actually make LinkedIn what's special about LinkedIn. It's the people.
Yes. And Jacqueline.
Come to LinkedIn to find your flock. Come to LinkedIn to find people who will lift you up, encourage you to expand in new opportunities, take advantage of being exposed to 800 million people.
Probably my favorite part of the segment. Come to LinkedIn to find your flock. I think that's amazing, and I think it's very appropriate. Thank you so very much. We hope you found your flock here today at the Urban League Jobs Network Digital Career Success Series. The team from LinkedIn, we really appreciate you. Once again, we do it again in 2 weeks on the 25th. Managing mental health. It's going to be amazing. We have Bailey Germain and Jewel Edward Love Jr. to host a robust discussion on managing mental health. We'll see you next week. My name is Kenneth L. Johnson. Thank you so very much for joining us.